Appalachian State University was not always known by that name. In fact, it started as Watauga Academy in 1899 and turned into a teacher's college in 1929. It wasn't until 1967 that Appalachian State Teachers College officially became Appalachian State University. While the name remains, the school today is drastically different than it was in the 1960s, and today we'll be taking a look into what life back then looked like attending Appalachian. From 1929 to 1967, the roots can be traced back to preparing teachers for school. Upon the post-war baby boom and higher demand for education, the school had a lot of change to make if it wanted to become the university it was today. This decade brought about many new programs, many new students, and many new buildings. All of this caused the school to grow, and the population nearly doubled in just a decade from 1957 to 1969. The 1960s were a very different time than the times of today, a time where everything was done on paper, the closest first-run movie located 40 miles away, and Beach Mountain just only being developed. There was a lot different in Boone. Society was a lot different as well, with a lot of different expectations put on students back then that were not today. Some of these included sign-out sheets, hall monitors, and visitation rules. A curfew was also one of the expectations, one that was typically earlier for women and especially on Sundays. The civil rights movement was just getting started, and while the decade did bring about some major breakthroughs in progress, they were pretty minimal and in the footsteps of other universities such as Chapel Hill and NC State. Some of the highlights of that decade were in 1964 when the first black student to attend App State arrived, and her name was Patricia Ferguson Bean. In 1968, William Roland Neely became the first black graduate at Appalachian with a bachelor's degree in psychology, and in 1969, Carolyn Anderson became the first black faculty member. In 1969, Muhammad Ali spoke at App State on the Black Muslim opinion of racial conflict. Athletics were still a huge part of Appalachian, with the Conrad Stadium just being built in 1962. This became huge for school spirit and school culture, as many students finally had something to do, and it also attracted lots of local Boone residents with the nice new stadium and new wooden bleachers. In 1968, the varsity gym opened, which allowed for indoor sports to also flourish and new places for people to gather. Basketball also was a prominent sport in this decade. Winters in Boone were still harsh and brought about many class delays and campus shutdowns. The worst one was a blizzard in 1960 that caused weeks of academic shutdown, roads closing, and 7 to 10 feet of snow that covered the town. There was a lot less resources to deal with the frigid temperatures back in these days. Clubs were still very, very popular, and students at the school voiced their opinion a lot. There were many walkouts and protests for certain things that the students didn't like that were taken up with the college faculty, and many times resolutions were found. Back in these days, even the yearbook had a different name, and the Rhododendron Club was the yearbook club. For such a small school, there were many of active clubs, including ones that appreciated the location and the scenery of the school. It seemed like there was a club for anyone who attended, because even though it was so small, there were so many different ones that included so many different people and so many different groups. Music was still a huge part of Appalachian State, and there were many bands, orchestras, and ensembles that performed concerts yearly. These would attract students and local Boone residents. There are even clubs that aren't really found today, such as the Women's Glee Club. Fish flying, which was just a club back then, has turned into a PE class now, and Yosef was clearly still a big part of Appalachian culture. Some might even argue that clubs were more active in earlier years, as people had to get out and go do something to go make and find friends. While many new departments were just getting started, there were certain departments that took off pretty immediately, sparking clubs such as the Psychology Club, which was only 2 years old in 1967. Obviously, there were many clubs that included education, as in the previous years before 1967, it was a college focused on preparing teachers. With a new science building being built and many libraries, there were also new clubs and many new programs that helped to educate students that were pursuing their hobbies. While the school is very different today, it's important to remember where our school came from and the roots that surround it. The school is still growing and likely will continue to. With almost 20,000 students now, Boone is still facing the same issues it did in 1960 with housing, expanding, and finding a larger sense of community.